2025 has been dominated by inquiries following explosive claims of infiltration in the criminal justice system by KZN police boss Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. The country also hosted the G20 Leaders Summit in Johannesburg, the first such event in Africa. Let's discuss this year's biggest stories with the UNISA politics professor, Dirk Kotze, as well as social commentator, Donovan Williams. Gentlemen, good to have you on the program this evening. Professor Kotze, I'll start with you. As we reflect on the year that was, a lot's been said about the Madlanga Commission, but my question to you this evening is, how central was this commission in really shaping President Cyril Ramaphosa's credibility on fighting corruption, for instance, but also on issues on governance?
Yes, good evening. Yes, the commission has been very important, together, I would say, with the ad hoc committee of Parliament, because they worked in a sense in parallel ways. And the last quarter of this year, very specifically, since around about September, the accusations or the claims that were made by General Mkhwanazi, to a large extent, have been confirmed by quite a lot of the evidence. Those who have been implicated obviously pushed back and tried to present their own narrative with respect to that. But I think for the public in general, it has been a very important event. It is quite, in that respect, actually very similar to that of the Zondo Commission, where it's not only about the investigative process itself, but it's at the same time very important as an informative element for the public in general. One can even go back to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission as something in the same vein, obviously different in terms of its focus, but that, I would say, are very important processes, public processes, for the public to understand what has happened or what is happening, and that it is seen as something where there is no biases built into it in terms of how to expose or to identify many of these aspects. The test will obviously be still when the Commission must submit their final report.
Donovan, we've heard the Prof calling these hearings important events, but from a public and social perspective, how are South Africans really responding to yet another commission of inquiry? Does it inspire confidence, or does it deepen the views of cynics here?
I like the choice of words. Good evening, and good evening, Professor Kotze, and hope the viewers are able to watch this fine evening in summer. Look, yet another. So there's an aspect of, I guess, commission fatigue or inquiry fatigue, and this has been the story for many matters. What we do know is that we have a corruption problem in our country, and we have a governance system and governance institutions that easily deteriorate when confronted by corruption or individuals who do not wish to follow the rules. How far and wide we protect them will be a question that we want. That's what we want. We want action. But how do we go about that action? And is it just, as you had indicated to Prof. Kotze, is it just the president? Is it deeper than that? And I think that when we entered this year, in many ways, we were treading water. I don't think we're trading water anymore, but that doesn't mean we are, flying high or swimming well. I don't think so. What needs to be done still needs to be done. The matters that not just those who run our governance systems, public governance, our agencies, and unfortunately now with the Madlanga Commission and the ad hoc parliamentary, our justice system is definitely been badly affected. And there's lack of trust in it. And that lack of trust and confidence requires all of us in many ways to put it right, especially the leading lights. And remember, we went into this year as well with the Government of National Unity, right? And a Government of National Unity, you would imagine when you have erstwhile competitors being forced to work together, they will focus on solving the problems. The GNU may have fallen short. The GNU hasn't resulted in the cooperative governance we would want as South Africans. It has still resulted in competition and internal matters of parties taking sway. So we have the soap opera at different times, be it the Madlanga Commission, be it problems in the Democratic Alliance or in the African National Congress, and that sways public perceptions. So we're not really tackling the matters that we wish to be tackled, and we're not getting the cooperation that you can make certain you deal with somebody effectively, and that means nobody in the party is going to, whichever party it is, will come back to launch an attack on you. Those are the things I think South Africans really concern themselves about, but play along and get involved in the soap opera that they see on TV, like they did with the Zondo Commission, and now they're doing with the Madlanga Commission.
Professor Kotze, turning to another soap opera, and also turning to international relations this time, how serious is the US's decision, especially to exclude South Africa from certain G20 processes? And what does it signal diplomatically for South Africa?
Yes, the situation for South Africa is highly complicated, especially in relation to the US. It's not so complicated when it comes to other parts of the world. There's a sort of a rapprochement at the moment happening with the European Union. I think the European Union sees an opportunity for themselves. There's a bit of a vacuum because the US is withdrawing in terms of its relationship with South Africa. The same with other parts of the world, especially the East, places like Indonesia, for example, South Korea, Japan, India, and others. They are all coming quite close to South Africa and other African countries also. It's not only South Africa. The African continent is becoming increasingly attractive as a trade partner, as a market, and for several and other aspects also. And that's across the board. It's not only the East, it's countries like as Turkey, also India, as I've said, European Union, Russia, and many others. And South Africa is in a sense caught within this, not against its will. It is very much something that South Africa, I think, sees it as the future in which we want to benefit from new markets, new alliances, and that is not, many people talk about BRICS. BRICS is now just one amongst quite a number of associations that South Africa has established lately. The G20 contributed to that. South Africa is, in terms of from a foreign policy point of view, is very strongly supporting or promoting the idea of multilateralism. Also, the idea of multipolarity. And it's that it is not anymore just the East or the West or the North or the South, but there are many more poles that are evolving. And that suits South Africa, especially the policy of a non-alignment. Yeah. It's very much sort of tailor-made for the idea of multipolarity. So South Africa has to maneuver within this. And the US undeniably is still the biggest power. And therefore, whether you like it or not, it has a major influence on South Africa. And it can hurt us in future. And I think there will be some event developments next year where that might be the case. But I think so long as South Africa is building a type of a supporting alliance for itself, it might be able to weather it better than if it was standing more or less on its own.
Yeah. Donovan, taking from Professor Kotze's word, it could hurt us in the future. But from a social and political lens, how are South Africans then interpreting these growing tensions with the US? Is it with defiance? Is it with concern? Or is it even with indifference here?
It may be all of that. I mean, firstly, I think the G20 summit was one of the high points of this year. We can be very proud of the way the South African government has managed their foreign policy in all multilateral institutions and the hosting of the G20. Despite the challenges in hosting the G20 with a very aggressive adversarial stance taken by the United States to the president in particular, he did all he could to scupper the G20. And the talks that took place, and closeness that South Africa got politically with particularly members of the European Union was very, very important for our country in the medium and long term, for that matter. Because the United States currently is not just having a complicated relationship with South Africa, it's having a complicated relationship with the entire world. There's no single country that can call themselves an ally of the United States. without a complicated relationship with them. The United States is a problem not just for South Africa, and that's because of many reasons. They've just launched their national security strategy a couple of weeks ago, and that national security strategy allows the United States to regard any country as an enemy if they don't do what the United States wants, be it economically, socially, or politically. So the United States is a problem. How South Africa managed itself in the G20 was exceptionally well. It has managed to make really, really strong friends. You've even had Germany issue a statement on its own volition saying it wants to convince the United States to improve its relationships with South Africa. It most probably wouldn't work and won't happen. But the point of the matter is that the United States, by one, accusing South Africa of genocide and persecution of Afrikaners and white people in general, has irked a lot of South Africans, including that self-same Afrikaners and white people. It has interfered in South African, not just politics, treated it really disrespectfully. Donald Trump, as I said, is a problem for the world. We would have to wait and see what happens in the midterm elections as the whole world is waiting, and see what then happens after that, what will be his reaction to those results, because the chances of his party, the Republican Party, retaining the Congress are slim. I doubt that it will happen. So for South Africa politically, the G20, maybe right now, the United States is, of course, icing out, excuse the pun, icing out South Africa from it. That's okay. It's going to ice out many others, not just South Africa, in many ways, because multilateral forums are places that the United States believes must work for the United States under Donald Trump. And we will wait, like others will wait, like other countries will wait to see what Donald Trump's reaction will be to those midterm elections. But politically, South Africa has shown it is quite a leader in the world, despite its own domestic challenges and despite its own socioeconomic backlogs. And South Africans, I think, in general, are proud of that. They would look at it as a high point, but they would ask, why can't you be this good domestically? And that is the dialectic. That is the part that bothers them. And somehow, if our government and our leaders can instill the confidence that we have with them on the political field internationally, they can do it domestically, we would be a much better country.
Professor Kotze, we're fast running out of time, but as we close out the year that was, what single political moment best captures South Africa in 2025 especially? And what should citizens most closely watch, especially in the new year?
Well, one moment that I think was for me very significant was the budget earlier this year, and where there were serious difference of opinion within the government of national unity. It came to a standstill for a moment. The ANC understood that they don't have a majority to push it through, which I think was a very important and significant moment for them. Then they went back, so a lot of negotiations happened, and then in the end, they did reach an agreement. And I think all the parties in government of national unity learned from it, because the government of national unity is not a negotiated coalition. It's something which was forced onto them by the results of the election. So they had to play that role in a sense of de facto opposition, as well as government within the same group, and that's the government of national unity. And I think with the budget, and subsequently with the medium-term expenditure framework, it meant much better. So I think it developed into a new type of style of internal relations within the government of national unity, which especially for next year for the election, when we are going to see other elements, other combinations maybe at local government level, we might, or these parties might have learned quite significant lessons from that.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. My thanks to Professor Kotze in Pretoria, as well as Donovan Williams joining us in Cape Town for their insights as we close the year that leaves South Africa as at a crossroads, really, at the home. The Madlanga Commission tests whether accountability and a will from reports to prosecutions may suffice. Abroad, tensions with the US and uncertainty around South Africa's G20 role do point to shifting global landscapes. At the heart of it all is institutions, or trust in institutions, leadership, and South Africa's place in the world. How this unfolds or shapes out both 2026 and public confidence in our country and democracy will be closely watched in the new year.